Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, as part of our special coverage of Austin Film Festival's 26th year, I chat with Jessica Sharzer about writing A Simple Favor, working on American Horror Story, and much more. It's a great interview, and I hope you enjoy. So this is Les from the TV Dudes, and I am lucky enough to be here chatting with Jessica Sharzer.
Hi there.
I saw Nerve, I guess, probably a year ago on streaming.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, everybody likes Dave Franco. He's just a likable kid.
Definitely.
I really enjoyed that movie, and I hadn't really had a lot of marketing put at me. I didn't really know much about it.
Right.
I kind of sat down to it, and it was a great surprise. Then finding out that the same writer also worked on AHS, it made total sense.
Right.
Excuse me, I'm really sorry to interrupt you guys. I met you the other day. Hi.
Thank you.
This is my film. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
No?
Thank you.
Nobody hustles like indie film producers.
It's amazing.
Nobody. I've never been called before a festival before, but my phone blew up all week. It was nuts.
That's great.
Who are you? What? Who do I know in a 310 area code?
Definitely.
But to find out that you had also written on American Horror Story and worked on that, can you talk a little bit about what your idea of your writing career was going to be back when you were in high school or college and just enjoying writing?
Yeah.
Did you think that you would move into a genre-heavy area, or was this always what you were interested in?
I didn't know I was going to be a writer. I always wrote when I was younger. I loved English class. I loved writing. I loved creative writing. I wrote a play in college. But I honestly didn't have a plan. I had no idea how I could parlay any of that into a career. Mm-hmm. So I came out of college and I had graduated like top of my class, and I really didn't know what to do with myself, which was a very horrible, disconcerting feeling. Mm-hmm. And I ended up applying to go to graduate school in Russian literature.
Okay.
So I started on the path of being an academic, and I was in that program for 2 years, got a master's degree, and then realized this was just not what I wanted to do. I didn't feel passionate enough about academia to devote my life to it. And I had made a short film somewhat on a lark. I'd gone to New York Film Academy, which has this boot camp type situation. And I had made a short film there, and I used that to apply to film school. So I basically moved into filmmaking as a goal and as an area in my 20s. And that was the first time I had really thought of doing it. And went to film school at NYU, and then came out and moved to LA. And I still didn't know that I was going to be specifically a writer. I went out there as a writer-director. So initially, everything I was attached to was the hyphenate. And that was great, but a lot of those movies didn't get made for various reasons. Partly, I was such a novice as a writer that I was writing for myself, but I wasn't writing scripts that were good enough, let's just say, for production. Okay. Or they were too indie and small for a big studio to make them, and I didn't know how to write a studio movie at the time.
Okay.
So this was in the early 2000s. And then I had a family. I had kids, and I basically, writing became a moving train for me, especially TV writing, and it was a way of having a predictable hours and staying in LA and not feeling like I didn't know where the next paycheck was coming from. So I moved very quickly into TV, and I stayed there because it was such a good life, and it was a good life I could provide for my kids. And I stopped pursuing directing at the time. Now I'm going back to it now that my kids are older. I'm more interested in it again. But at the time, writing was a really great gig, and specifically TV writing, because you could have a regular paycheck and know where you were going for a while. If the show were successful, which ours was, you have a job for a couple of years, which is, for a writer, a mind-blowing thing.
Yeah, especially shifting from features where so often you could just write a script and you did it. Yay,
right.
It's in a drawer.
Right. And that's it.
Or worse, it gets bought but not produced. And, and how many people have scripts that were sold that paid their rent, but no one will ever see.
Exactly. And that's a certain kind of soul crushing, which I've tried to explain it to my parents. My mother always says, "But you got paid for it, right?" And it's like, yes, I did, but it's still so painful when you care so much about something and it's never going to get made.
Yeah. Working at a job in college, doing art design for a video game, it didn't get produced, and it was the first time that I ever lost a sketchbook to a non-disclosure thing, where like nothing you drew in that is
yours.
Just throw that away. If you accidentally use it in a project later, you'll get somebody else in trouble.
Yeah.
And it was just a wild realization of it is an
painful.
odd, like, you did this work that you're proud of.
Yeah, and you can't show it to
you really
people.
can't show it to anybody.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about I talked about Nerve being one that caught me off guard.
Yeah.
Simple Favor, I think, caught everybody off guard. That was that was a movie where the buzz really did spread among my friends of like, has everybody seen this? Have we all seen this now?
That's awesome. I love that.
Can you talk? It's an adaptation.
Yes.
Can you talk a bit about the challenges as a writer and what you enjoyed or what you ran headlong into?
Yeah.
Trying to adapt that.
I can. In fact, Nerve and Simple Favor were both adaptations.
Oh, okay.
I do a lot of book adaptations. And with Simple Favor, the biggest change that I made, I made a lot of big changes to the book. So people who read the book are pretty thrown if they've seen the movie first and then they go to the book. There's a lot of huge changes between them. I'll give you two examples. The first one is that much like Gone Girl, the original novel shifts perspective to Emily halfway through. So that's the Blake Lively character. So you know exactly that she's alive, B, that she's plotted this whole thing, C, you start to find out how she's using Emily in her plot. And basically I said to the studio, look, Gone Girl already did this structurally. And I think they did it really well, and it's a really famous movie, very high profile. I think we should not do it. So the very first thing I said to them was, look, I think we should stay in Stephanie's perspective and just tell the Emily story through her perspective. So what does she remember? Snippets of conversations. So that's why there's a lot of flashbacks in the movie. We wanted Blake to be very much in the movie, but we didn't want to give away sort of her plan.
Yeah.
And so that was really, that was a big change from the novel. Another huge change is that there's way more that happens. There's sort of more to the noir plot in the novel. So, for example, in the novel, the two women end up murdering the insurance adjuster, and then basically planting DNA evidence of Sean, the husband, on the body so that he gets accused of that. And for me, that was just a really big stretch to try to figure out how this sort of like very uptight, prim and proper stay-at-home mom is going to get to the point where she's going to commit a murder and why. And so we ended up not using that part of the book at all. So our movie just stays within the confines of those three characters. So what they're pinning on him still has to do with his wife, not some outside party.
That makes sense. I can also see, even if you have the argument that this is the way the book did it and we are simply doing it the way the book did with the perspective shift, you would be constantly defending that.
Right.
And every press junket about, why did y'all do the Gone Girl thing?
Right,
and,
exactly.
No, but the book, you'd be so tired of saying no, but the book.
Right, exactly.
Do you feel like the understanding to make those changes, to say, like, let's reduce this complexity and make this character arc a little more clear, do you think that was changed by your experience kind of learning to write a production-ready script and learning to aim at, like, okay, this is too big a set piece, or this is an extra 30 or 40 minutes of explanation if we do it right for the audience, and that's going to make this movie 3 hours long?
Yeah, it's less about length, although, of course, whenever you're adapting a novel, you have to lose some things because you can never get the richness of detail that a novel has. But it's less about length, and it's more about, I always try to remember how I felt the first time I read the book. And the book really had me in the beginning. And then toward the end, I got lost. And so I try to remember that because that's the experience the audience is having, you know? And so I always try to think, first of all, we were writing within a genre, and we were inspired by filmmakers like Hitchcock for this movie, and so you start to look at a lot of those classics, and the truth is the stories are actually relatively simple. They're not sort of super complex.
Yeah, no, Hitchcock plots are
Very simple.
dead simple. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was much more about diving into the characters and their dynamics and their relationships and really kind of like digging into them to see, well, why would Stephanie fall in love with the husband? You know, what is it about him? So we went further with his character and with the nuances of what was going on between them over the course of this crisis that would make them fall in love, beyond a physical attraction. What more is there? So I was more interested in keeping the plot sort of streamlined so that we could do all of this kind of deeper dive into all three of those characters.
Yeah. I think that's great. That everybody Psycho's a classic, and everybody remembers Norman and Mother, but every time I rewatch that movie, I'm struck by how Janet Leigh's character is on the run.
Yeah.
Like, what is happening with her at the bank, and you realize there's a whole other movie going on, that this is just this rock thrown in it.
Yep.
And I forget that from time to time when I rewatch that movie. I go, oh gosh, I forgot we started at the bank.
Right. Yes.
And it wouldn't work without it. I was talking to there was a documentary just recently about the movie Alien, and talking to the director of it. He was making something about the chestburster scene.
Yeah.
Well, kind of what he ended up discovering is that all of those family scenes look like Altman movies. I had never thought about that in the context of Alien. That if you'd asked me to remake Alien or make another one, I might think big mecha suit and fighting the eggs and all that. I don't know that I would think that you've got to have those family moments that are like the commissary scenes in MASH, basically, or the rest of the movie doesn't play.
Right. Yeah, it's key. Because especially when you're working in genre, to care about those big scary set pieces, whether it's a thriller or horror, you have to have really gotten to know the characters in one way or another. You know, you have to care.
When it comes to something like American Horror Story, where, just when you think, okay, this thing is full to the seams of plot, then suddenly aliens or something just in, Santa Claus or something crazier. Can you talk a bit about balancing what has to just be the rambunctious fun of that, with making sure that you still get those character moments?
Yeah, first of all, it all springs from the head of Ryan Murphy, and so his process is completely unique to him. So I can't claim any credit for any of that, but we always wanted to be shocking and surprising. That was always sort of the mandate, whether it was said aloud or not. And so, we would entertain each other in the writer's room, and we would say like the most crazy off the wall thing we could, and then see if and sometimes it would end up in the show. Often it would end up in the show. So we entertained each other a lot, and we all had really dark, twisted senses of humor. So I don't know what the writer's room there is like now, but I'm sure it's a lot of fun. A lot of those people are still there. But I learned so much from those writers, because I think because we were all a little bit older when we started on the show, and a lot of them had been doing TV for a long time, there was a kind of comfort level. There was a confidence level. There was not the kind of uptight. What I've noticed in other writers' rooms is when you have newer writers, sometimes they're uptight about logic, or they're uptight about exposition. We've got to explain this, we've got to explain that. How did they get from point A to point B? Ryan never asks those questions. It's like, if you want them to start here, just start them there. You don't have to explain how they got there, or when they got there, or why. Just kind of cut directly into the action. And for that reason, the pacing of his stuff is really, really fast, because he doesn't feel the need to explain everything, and in fact would rather not. And if it means the audience has to catch up later, that's okay.
Yeah, all of the rest of my life I think back on this. It's fine. David Lynch has had a fine career, confusing the crap out of me for years at a time. It's fine.
We never really wanted to be confusing. It was more that we wanted to just keep it exciting and keep the audience guessing, so we always would subvert expectations.
That roller coaster pace is part of what makes AHS, I think, so fun. And y'all really definitely nailed that. I can't thank you enough for talking to me about all this today.
Oh, thank you.
I really appreciate it.
It's been great.
The TV Dudes is an independently run podcast and a member of the Electric Sweater Podcast Network. We are exclusively listener-supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/tvdudes. You can like us on Facebook and Twitter at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is by our friend and original TV dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith. To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com and electricsweater.com. I'm Grant Davis. Thanks for listening.